Hi, recently I discovered Retropie and got excited about playing classic arcade games such as Street Fighter, Gauntlet, and Double Dragon. So I wanted to make an arcade stick. This project is about making a high quality arcade stick in the easiest way possible. There's a lot of DIY arcade stick resources out there, but most of them include a lot of woodworking, skills, equipment, and time. So instead of building a case from scratch, you can use a pre-built case like this one to make an arcade stick. So these are the parts that we'll need to build our fight stick. First of all, we have a Sanwa JLF joystick. It's a light-feeling, accurate, and precise joystick. And we also have a 35mm Sanwa ball top and 4 screws and washers to mount our joystick. Over here we have 8 30mm Seimitsu screw-in type buttons. Alternatively, you can get snap-in buttons, but those usually require a more precisely drilled hole and thinner control panel, whereas the screw-in types, they have this collar here that will hold the button in place, so you don't really need precise holes, and it can accommodate a varying thickness of control panel. I also have 24mm buttons for menu control, and at the heart of the fight stick we have the zero delay USB encoder, which takes signal input from the buttons and the joystick and creates a USB joystick when connected to a PC. Now this USB encoder comes with cables, and you want to make sure that if you have a Japanese joystick with this 5-pin connection, the USB encoder comes with a cable that can connect to your controller. In addition to this cable, we also have cables for the buttons and a USB cable that comes with this encoder. This would connect to the encoder, go through the fight stick case, and connect to the PC. Now I wanted a cleaner solution, so I purchased a Nutric USB pass-through, and what this does is I'll connect the cable inside the case to the pass-through, and then at the outside of the case I'll have this nice interface which will connect to a 10-foot USB cable. This is mounted to the case with these screws and nuts. One thing to note about this item is that it's reversible, so I wanted the USB-A connection on the inside to connect to the cable, and a USB-A connection on the outside to connect to the external cable. Now what makes this build easy is that we have a pre-made wooden storage box. Now you can find these online for pretty cheap, around $10. What you want to make sure is you have a large enough surface area where you can rest your palms on when you're using your controller. What I would recommend is having 12 inches wide box and at least 8.5 inches depth. Now for the thickness, you just need enough space inside so you can accommodate the joystick. So the Sanwa joystick here is 1.5 inches, so at least 2 inches inside the box. So for our build, we want to put all the components in the bottom half of this box, and this allows us to place the joystick, the control buttons, the USB encoder, and the 24mm buttons all on one side. So we don't have components on the bottom and top and wires crossing in between these two halves. The problem with these type of boxes is that they're usually rather thin. So this is only 4mm thick. So we want to reinforce this. You can add a piece of wood and glue it to the top of your fight stick panel. And what this does is, first it reinforces the top panel to make it stronger. It also allows us to decrease the height of the joystick from 33mm to about 24mm, which is the standard height of joysticks. And This has the added benefit of allowing me to mount the joystick to this panel, so I can thread holes into this panel and just use screws to mount the joystick instead of using screws and nuts. In that case, I would have to drill holes all the way through the box and breaking this nice smooth surface. So let's get started building our fight stick. Now we're going to glue the reinforcement board into the box. So we just need to use some wood glue, apply it to the board. After you apply the glue onto the board, just press it into the box. Apply some pressure. And then if you have clamps, you can use it to clamp the board together to the box, or you can just apply some weights and then let it dry for 24 hours. Before we drill into the holes, we need to plan the location of the joystick and the buttons. You can download templates at slagcoin.com. I selected a layout that's a standard Japanese arcade layout, except the buttons are slightly slanted and the joystick is further away at 95 millimeters. This felt comfortable for me. We need a nail to mark the center of each one of these holes, a drill and this wooden jig to help us drill pilot holes that are perpendicular, and a 24 millimeter drill for the joystick and a 30 millimeter drill for each one of the control buttons. One thing to know about these larger drills is that when they exit, they usually cause blowout and splintering. So to prevent this, it's good to have a supporting piece of wood underneath the control panel, and that should prevent blowout. Now that we have holes drilled for the joystick and the control buttons, we can go ahead and drill holes for the menu buttons and the USB pass-through. Now the sides of my box are too thick for the 24 millimeter screw-in buttons, so I'll use a Forstner bit to reduce the thickness behind each hole. Now we can drill holes for the joystick and the USB encoder. Now that we've drilled all the holes into the box, we can start installing all the components. Now we're ready to wire up the joystick. So we can hook up first the joystick cable. This goes into the socket in the middle, and there's only one way to push it in. For the other side, we want to make sure that VDD, this first pin here, is connected to this bottom pin of the joystick. For the buttons, it doesn't matter which wire we use for each of these pins. I hope you found this build helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you want more information about this build, please click on the link below.